Simply learn. Your pace, your place.
Hello and welcome to the Project Management Institute's Risk Management Professional Certification Preparatory course offered by Simply Learn. These lessons will help in preparing for the PMI RMP certification exam. In addition to this, it will also help in acquiring the skills needed for managing risks in the context of projects. This is the first of the 10 lessons that we're going to look into. The first lesson will introduce us to the course. There are a couple of acronyms on the slides. These acronyms are defined as the lesson. This certification course is based on 2 books authored by PMI. First is titled Project Management Body of Knowledge, popularly called PMBOK, and the second is titled Practice Standard for Project Risk Management. We will now look into the agenda in the next slide. As indicated in the previous slide, this is an introductory lesson and it introduces PMI and RMP. These are also the terms we will frequently encounter in conversation with certified professionals or people preparing for this exam. We will begin by understanding the terms and information associated with PMI, RMP and PMI. After discussing PMI and RMP, we will outline the prerequisites for the exam, how the exam looks like, etc. For an example, we will cover topics like how many questions are there in the exam, what is the pass criterion, how many questions are expected, and from which part of the syllabus. The next topic is about the timeline for the application process and the syllabus of the RMP examination. The second last topic describes the domains in RMP, tasks associated against each domain, and the skills required to carry out the domain success. Lastly, we will explain how the Simply Learn RMP certification course is structured. It is important to understand this introductory part before we start accessing the remaining lessons of this course. Let us start with some information related to PMI RMP and PMI. In this slide, we have covered the terms and information related to PMI RMP and PMI, which are mentioned in the previous slide. PMI RMP stands for PMI Risk Management Professional. It is one among the several certifications that PMI offers for those who wish to specialize in the area of managing risks in the context of projects. PMI stands for Project Management Institute. It is a leading organization based in the US, which actively promotes the disciplines of program and project management, along with supplementary specializations such as agile, risk, and scheduling management. So we can say that while PMI is an organization, PMI RMP is a certification offered by PMI. PMI RMP examination is conducted by PMI through authorized testing centers across the world. After the certification, one may have questions about the validity of this course. The certification is valid for 3 years, and you are required to earn and report 30 Professional Development Units, PDUs, within this 3-year cycle to renew the certification. After this period, to renew your RMP credentials, you need to submit proof that you have acquired at least 30 PDUs in the last 3 years and have paid the PMI certificate renewal fee. Once it is done, the certificate gets renewed for another 3 years. One can easily renew the certificate online at www.pmi.org. This website also contains the PMI RMP Handbook, which gives information on the various ways of obtaining PDUs. PDUs can be obtained from a registered educational provider, REP. In order to get this book, a membership for the website is required. It would be possible to download the soft copies of the textbooks licensed to the member once membership is done. The website also contains other important information like the membership and fee structure, including the examination fee. PMBOK stands for Project Management Body of Knowledge. It is a textbook which can be used as reference for most of the PMI certifications, including RMP. The other textbook which we can refer for RMP preparation is Practice Standard for Project Risk Management. In the next slide, we are going to discuss the prerequisites for taking RMP certificate examination. The prerequisite depends upon a person's formal education. As seen in the slide, you might fall into either of the two categories. If you fall into Category 1, PMI expects you to hold a 4-year degree, bachelor's degree or global equivalent, with at least 3,000 hours of project risk management experience within the last 5 consecutive years. Additionally, you will need to obtain 30 contact hours or PDUs, and this course will enable you to obtain those PDUs. If you fall in Category 2, PMI expects you to hold a secondary diploma, high school diploma, associate's degree, or global equivalent, with at least 4,500 hours of project risk management experience within the last 5 consecutive years. Additionally, you will need to obtain 40 contact hours or PDUs, and this course will enable you to obtain those PDUs. PDUs can be obtained from a registered educational provider, REP, and Simply Learn is one of them. When you meet the prerequisites and complete this course, you can apply for the PMI RMP certification through the official PMI website, www.pmi.org. Once PMI receives the application, it will take 5 to 7 working days to approve the application. From the date of the approval, you will have 1 year's time to write the examination. Once you decide to sit for the exam, you can proceed to pay for it. Please visit the official PMI website and the PMI RMP handbook for details on the examination fee. PMI will send you an authorization mail after receiving the examination fee. Then you can block the examination venue, date, and time for appearing for the examination. A random audit happens on a few applications, in which case the auditing requirements of PMI should be complied with. In case the application is selected for auditing, the applicant must provide the copies of education certificate, the project risk management experience details, and 30 PDU project risk management proof. After that, the PMI takes about 5 to 7 working days to issue an authorization letter which serves as an approval for paying the exam fee and appearing for the examination. If you do not meet the prerequisites and go ahead to submit the online exam application, you might get caught. PMI forbids such behavior and disqualifies such an application. For more details about the application processing, please visit www.pmi.org website. In the next slide, we will look into the PMI RMP examination in detail. The examination will contain multiple choice questions. You will be tested on 170 questions, out of which 20 questions are test questions for future tests which will not be scored. Only 150 questions will be scored. You get 1 point for every right question. There is no penalty for the wrong answer, so please attempt all the questions. Total duration of the exam is 3.5 hours. PMI grades students on each of the 4 project risk management domains, and based on this grading, they declare a PMI RMP pass or fail. The number of grades one has to score to pass the PMI RMP exam is not made public by PMI. The grading used is below proficient, proficient, and moderately proficient in each of the 4 project risk management domains. We will continue our discussion on PMI RMP exam in the next slide. PMI will grade you on 5 key project risk management domains, namely risk strategy and planning, 5 tasks, stakeholder engagement, 9 tasks, risk process facilitation, 7 tasks, risk monitoring and reporting, 7 tasks, and perform specialized risk activities, 3 tasks. About 19 to 20% of the total questions will be from risk strategy and planning, about 19 to 20% from stakeholder engagement, 25 to 28% from risk process facilitation, 19 to 20% from risk monitoring and reporting, and 14 to 16% from perform specialized risk activities. The next slide deals with timeline of the RMP credential process. The diagram in the slide depicts the timeline of the RMP credential process. The application has to be submitted online from the PMI website. Once you start filling the application, it will be available to you for 90 days. Once you submit the completed application, PMI takes about 5 working days to review. If the application is through, you get a notification for payment of the examination fee. There are chances that the application may go for auditing. If your application is selected for auditing, you will need to submit the documents like education certificate, the credential for risk management experience, which you have mentioned in the online application, and PDU certificate issued by Simply Learn. The timeline you will have is 90 days. Once the PMI receives audit material, they may take about 5 to 7 days for the approval. Now you're ready to pay the examination fee and can select the venue, date, and slot for the examination. To understand this in detail, please refer to the RMP Handbook from PMI. You need to take the examination within 1 year from the date of application approval. The certification is valid for 3 years, and after that, you can review by reporting PDUs. Please refer to the RMP Handbook for further information on the PDUs. In the following slide, we will look into the examination syllabus. Apart from the 4 project risk domains mentioned in the previous slide, we need to know the 6 processes that PMI recommends for effectively planning and monitoring risks on the project. The people who are already qualified as PMP know the project risk management knowledge area contains 6 processes, namely plan risk management, identify risks, perform qualitative risk analysis, perform quantitative risk analysis, plan risk responses, and control risks. The first 5 processes come under Planning Process Group, and the last one comes under Monitoring and Controlling Process Group. In fact, one entire lesson is dedicated to each of the processes, wherein we will look into the purpose of the process, the tools used in that process, the critical success factors of that process, and how we document the results of that process. The delegates who are not PMP certified need not worry, as we are going to discuss in detail about all these processes. I would strongly recommend that you go through the Simply Learn PMP e-learning course. The 5 domains are looked at in each of the processes. Each of these slides carries some of the tasks, like risk strategy and planning carries 5 tasks, stakeholder engagement carries 9 tasks, risk process facilitation and risk monitoring and reporting consists of 7 tasks each, and finally, perform specialized risk activities consists of 3 tasks. Let us move on to the domain 1, which is risk strategy and planning, in the following slide. The first domain has activities related to developing policies, processes, and procedures for risk assessment, planning, and response. There are 5 tasks in this domain. They are: first task is to develop risk assessment processes and tools, which quantify stakeholder risk tolerances in order to assess and determine risk thresholds for the project and set criteria for risk levels. Risk tolerance and threshold will be dealt with in the following lessons. We can also refer to PMBOK for the definition. Second task is to update risk policies and procedures using lessons learned and risk audit outputs. The third task is to develop and recommend project risk strategy. based on project objectives, which help in developing risk management plan. Task 4 is to produce risk management plan for the project on the basis of input from project information, external factors, stakeholder inputs, industry policies and procedures, in order to define, fund, and staff effective risk management processes. The fifth and the last task is to establish evaluation criteria for risk management processes, based on baselines and objectives, in order to measure effectiveness of project risk process. In the next slide, we will find out the knowledge and skills required by the project manager to achieve these tasks. The knowledge required is how to achieve the continuous process improvement, collecting lessons learned, and documenting them in the knowledge management bank using techniques, defining metrics for effective risk process achievement, understanding risk attitude of the stakeholders, breaking down the higher level risk into smaller components, also called the risk breakdown structure, understanding how to apply risk tolerance concepts, identifying barriers to effective risk management, various inputs, tools and techniques and outputs under risk processes, also known as ITTOs, analyzing reserves requirement based on uncertainties using research and analysis techniques, and finally, defining basic strategy development methodologies by involving SMEs. The skills required are assessing stakeholder risk tolerance and building stakeholder consensus. In the next slide, we will understand the next domain called Stakeholder Engagement. This domain defines activities related to promoting the understanding of project risk management for stakeholders and project team members, assessing stakeholder risk tolerance, prioritizing project risk, and promoting risk ownership. To achieve this, the project manager should perform 9 tasks. We will look into each of the high-level tasks. They are: the first task is to promote a common understanding of the value of risk management using interpersonal skills in order to adopt a level of risk ownership. The second task is to train, coach, and educate stakeholders in risk principles and processes to raise the engagement in risk management. The third task is to coach the project team members in implementing risk processes to ensure the consistent application of risk processes. The fourth task is using different tools and techniques to assess stakeholders' risk tolerance. The fifth task is to identify stakeholders' risk attitudes in order to manage stakeholders' expectations throughout the project lifecycle. The sixth task is to engage stakeholders based on risk prioritization process in order to optimize the consensus regarding priorities. The seventh task is to provide risk-related recommendations to stakeholders using effective communication techniques so as to achieve effective risk-based decisions. The next task is to promote risk ownership by proactive communication of roles and responsibilities in order to improve risk response execution. The ninth and the last task is to liaise with stakeholders of other projects by the exchange of risk-related information. In the next slide, we will find out the knowledge and skills required for stakeholder engagement. The project manager should possess the following knowledge: information resources, both internal, like organizational process asset, and external, like enterprise environmental factors, project performance information, which helps in distributing to stakeholders, sensitivity models to assess stakeholder attitudes like risk-seeking, tolerance and acceptance. In addition to this, the project manager should understand how to coach and train the stakeholders about risk management-related topics. Types of stakeholder risk attitudes like risk-seeking, tolerant and averse. Gap should be addressed through group decision-making and group creativity, such as brainstorming, Delphi method, etc. To understand the techniques like Delphi, brainstorming, etc., please refer to PMBOK. The skills required for achieving stakeholder engagement are: the project manager should use assessment of stakeholders' risk tolerance, collaboration with stakeholders, understanding and managing teams in multicultural environments, and influencing the changes for better prospects. In the next slide, we will learn the third domain, which is risk process facilitation. Risk process facilitation are activities related to facilitating risk identification, evaluation, prioritization, and response among project team members. Let us see the 7 tasks which are required to achieve this domain successfully. They are: Task 1 is about applying tools related to risk assessment, as well as processes to quantify stakeholder risk tolerance and determine risk levels. Task 2 is to facilitate risk identification using a variety of techniques to enable project team and stakeholders to understand and determine the risk exposure of the project. Task 3 is to facilitate project teams' evaluation of the identified risks attributes using qualitative and quantitative methods for risk prioritization and planning. Task 4 is to facilitate development of an aligned risk response strategy and actions from the gathered information. Task 5 is to facilitate the formulation of project contingency reserve based on risk exposure. Task 6 is to provide data to cost and schedule analysts about the risk so they can estimate the cost and schedule accordingly. The last task is to explore the used scenarios to validate potential risk responses and key dependencies and requirements, and evaluate in order to enhance likelihood of project success. In the next slide, we will find out the knowledge and skill required for risk process facilitation. The knowledge requirements are: how to use tools and techniques for risk identification, risk analysis, both qualitative and quantitative, contingency, and risk monitoring areas. Apart from this, knowledge of getting the risk perception and behavior, risk response types to apply the right strategy, contingency management tools and techniques, risk monitoring and control techniques, and brainstorming and Delphi technique, which are used under group decision-making and group creativity techniques, are also required. For more insight about these techniques, please refer to PMBOK. The skills required are: use of analytical software tools for project risk management, managing teams in multicultural environments, and estimating probability and impact of the identified risks in order to provide ranking. In the next slide, we will look into the 4th domain, which is risk monitoring and reporting. Risk monitoring and reporting are activities related to monitoring risk, evaluating risk response against established metrics, and communicating risk response performance to stakeholders and project team. The first task is to document and periodically update project risk information to maintain a single source of information. The second task is to coordinate with project manager using communication to integrate risk management throughout the project. The third task is to create periodic standard and customized reports which contain risk-related metrics as per the Risk and Communication Management Plan. The fourth task is to monitor risk response metrics by analyzing so that it will be helpful in tackling residual and/or secondary tasks, if any. The fifth task is to analyze risk process performance against metrics in order to drive risk process improvements. The sixth task is to update project risk management plan using internal and external inputs in order to keep the plan updated. The last task is to capture risk lessons learned through comprehensive review of risk management plan, risk register, risk audits, risk process performance reports, and other reports in order to incorporate future risk planning. In the next slide, we will find out the knowledge requirement of this domain. The knowledge required is how to carry out continuous process improvement and essence of quality management as applied to risk management, the knowledge management techniques, the different ways of generating project risk reports to stakeholders, the different data requirements capturing for the risk register and risk statement construction, and risk response activity construction. Apart from this, the other knowledge required for this domain is collection and reporting of different risk-related metrics, like risk response metrics, risk process performance metrics, and risk assessment analysis metrics. The last knowledge required is measuring the management reserve requirement based on the unknowns of the situation and reporting to make the project success. There is no specific skill required pertaining to this domain. In the next slide, we will understand the last domain, which is to perform specialized risk analysis. Perform specialized risk analysis activities are related to the specialized qualitative and quantitative tools and techniques used by the project risk management professionals. There are only 3 tasks associated with this domain. They are: the first one is to evaluate the attributes of identified risks using advanced quantitative tools and specialized qualitative techniques which help in estimating overall risk exposure of the project. The second task is to analyze risk data, which are produced during the project to determine the SWOT, abbreviated as strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat, of risk strategy and process, and recommending process improvements as needed. The third and the last task is to perform specialized risk analysis using advanced tools and techniques in order to support stakeholder decision-making for the project. In the next slide, we will learn the knowledge and skills required to attain these tasks. The knowledge required is tools and techniques used for the risk identification, qualitative risk analysis, identifying and analyzing the overall project risk. The name of a few tools and techniques are Delphi, Nominal Group Technique, Monte Carlo Analysis, and risk-based analytical and critical chain analysis. Other knowledge requirements are basic and advanced statistics, estimation tools and techniques like cost-benefit analysis, advanced theory of heuristics, and other sources of cognitive bias, and finally, variance analysis using earned value method. The details of above skills can be obtained by reading into the PMBOK. We have covered some of the tools in the future lessons. For further queries, email support@simplylearn.com. Apart from the knowledge, the skills required are converting qualitative information into risk data, building representative risk models, and managing and interpreting quantitative and qualitative data. With this, we have come to the end of the introductory lesson. In the next slide, we will find out the overall arrangement of further lessons. There are 10 lessons as part of this course. This being the first lesson. Lesson 2, 3, and 4 would set the context for lessons 5 through 10. As discussed earlier, in each of the processes, starting from lesson 5, we are going to look into 4 themes. First, what is the purpose of the process? Second, what tools can we use in that process? Third, what are the critical success factors of the process? And fourth, how do we document the results of the process? Lesson 2 will introduce us to risk management. Lesson 3 is about the principles and concepts. Lesson 4 introduces us to a project risk management process. Lesson 5 is on plan risk management. In Lesson 6, we will find out how to identify risks. We will perform qualitative and quantitative risk analysis in Lesson 7 and 8 respectively. Lesson 9 deals with planned risk responses, and the last lesson is on how to control risks. Once you are through with all these 10 lessons, you can go ahead and take our online simulation tests. Let us summarize the lesson in the following slide. Let us find out what we have learned so far. In this lesson, we learnt about PMI and RMP. PMI RMP is an exam which stands for Project Management Institute Risk Management Professional. There are certain prerequisites for taking the PMP RMP exam. The exam format and exam syllabus is defined by PMI. There are 5 domains which have respective tasks, knowledge, and skills. These domains are risk strategy and planning, stakeholder engagement, risk process facilitation, risk monitoring and reporting, and perform specialized risk analysis. In the next lesson, we will learn the risk management framework.
Thank you.